So for me as an entrepreneur, it's all about, focusing on the things that are going to, have the biggest impact and, focusing wherever I can in my zone of genius, and all the other things that are outside of that or that I'm not great at, finding people that I can trust to help me with those things so I can build and scale. And again, like focus more of my time where I can have the greatest impact.
Your network is your net worth. Come listen to some of the most successful people I know share invaluable knowledge, stories, and advice in real estate, business, and beyond. This is Weiss Advice. Whether you want to take your business or personal life to the next level, look no further. Welcome back to Weiss Advice. And I am your host, Yona Weiss, and this episode of Weiss Advice is twice as nice because we have a fellow Weiss, a sister from another Mr. Allison Weiss, with me today. How you doing, Allison?
I'm great, Yona. How are you? Your sister from the West Coast.
Unbelievable. Yeah. It's such a pleasure to have you on the show. Just a little context, you guys, you know who Allison is. If you don't already, no relation, but she is a rock star in the commercial real estate space. So if you don't know who she is, you probably should. Okay. She has had over 10 years experience in the commercial real estate, specifically recruiting in the commercial real estate space, which means she's, been involved in human resources and, the full cycle of recruiting and helping people throughout their job, tenure with different companies, major companies like Marcus and Millichap and, Colliers International, huge companies in the commercial real estate space. And about a year ago, I think we're just about a year's anniversary. I mean, by the time this is airs, it's going to be a little over that, but created a company called Commercial CRE Recruiting, which is, and I'll let you maybe take a little bit about that, but it's a national, basically commercial real estate recruiting firm. So you're helping candidates, helping people, helping companies find the right talent, and specifically within that niche of commercial real estate, which is awesome because there's so many people out there looking for jobs, so many companies looking for the right talent, and and you're like a matchmaker, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. I've worked nationally my entire career within commercial real estate. So I have clients across all sort of spectrums within commercial real estate and across the country.
And now you just started something new, right? A brand new venture or a rebranding of sorts, which is CRE at Work, right?
Yeah.
So what's that? Give me a minute about what CRE at Work's all about.
Yeah, great question. So as I was creating CRE recruiting, I realized that I was really only able to help people with that company at two different points. One, when they were looking for a new opportunity for themselves, or two, when they were a company who was looking to grow. And I think, commercial real estate professionals in our business need support throughout the course of their careers. I think, oftentimes I'm hearing from candidates who might have been in the same position for a few years and have sort of stagnated or hit a plateau. And I want to help people with resources, advice, sort of programs to help get them over those hurdles and help them to grow stronger, more fulfilling careers and companies within commercial real estate.
Awesome. So you're really helping the whole life cycle, the whole ecosystem for any company, looking to grow in any way whatsoever, which is awesome.
Absolutely.
And you're pooling all your resources, which you have a ton of, and it's really about the connections. And speaking of resources and connections, I mean, I just remember, I think the first time I got introduced to you, I saw you on the front cover of CoStar, right?
Yeah.
and
that was
I'm like, who's this? This was like a famous person, and she's got my last name. I gotta meet this lady. And there you are on the front cover of CoStar talking about this new incredible company you founded. So that was huge.
Yeah.
How did that happen? Like that doesn't happen to anyone.
Question. Yeah. So I've been really lucky, since I founded the company to have some great media coverage. I was in CoStar and Globe Street on sort of the leading page and the leading newsletter within a week of each other. So partially I have a great PR person. Shout out to Darcy Gicchetto, who runs Places PR, which is commercial real estate specific PR firm. But I've also been able to forge some really great relationships within sort of the media community within our industry. So Connect Media You've probably seen me in Biz Now a few times. So I've been just really lucky and willing to help out some of my peers in media whenever possible.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's cool. It's good to know people in the right places. I guess.
Yeah,
I,
exactly.
I should start looking for those type of people. And I think it really just comes with your experience in the industry, and that just shows how you have in the the first week or couple weeks of starting a brand new company as an entrepreneur and getting
Yeah.
like the best press media coverage in the industry as possible. It just shows the talent that you bring
Thank
to
you.
to what you're doing. Let me ask you, this is kind of a difficult question, but obviously right now we're experiencing huge unemployment
Yes.
across the board, and there's challenges because right now things have changed so much that
Mhm.
companies are not necessarily hiring people in-house, and people are doing things differently, hiring virtual staff and things like that. Like, how
Yeah.
are you seeing it from someone who is deeply involved in that aspect of the of the industry? How are you seeing things happening?
Well, I'll tell you a couple different things. One, I think the people who are still as close as possible to deal making are probably the safest people right now in terms of keeping their jobs. The people who are bringing value and bringing revenue to a company, they tend to have safer seats during a sort of recessionary period like we're experiencing. That being said, I do think I have a lot of clients and connections in the business who have seen this movie before, albeit a very different one in 2008, and I've really done a good job of being conservative sort of fiscal managers and socking away
Right.
dry powder for such a time as this. So I do see hiring happening where you have really solid sort of financial fundamentals behind a company, and some more opportunistic strategies around some of the more hard hit asset classes within our business. So if you look at retail, if you
Right.
look at sort of adaptive reuse of retail, I have clients who are raising $100 million+ funds to go and tackle, some of the dinosaur big boxes that have been left vacant. Some of that was pre-COVID. It was already
Yeah,
happening.
sure.
I think, you'll see hospitality potentially reconversion into, apartments and condos. And the people who are being really entrepreneurial right now, the people who have capital, I think are hiring, but you aren't seeing the frothiness in the market that we saw for the last, especially five years. And that's been a challenge. I still don't think that we have been as heavily impacted as some other industries or the country as a whole. But certainly, I feel for the people who are coming out of undergraduate or coming out of graduate degree
Hmm.
programs. I think that particular, entry level, type of role has become rather non-existent in a lot of different markets, unfortunately.
Well, what would you say to someone like that, like, college people or postgraduate, people that are coming right now to the market, and
Yeah.
they've had this dream of getting involved in real estate, and they love the industry, or they got their degree in something like that. What would what kind of advice would you give to them at this point? Like, what should they be doing?
Sure. Well, one of the things I think about myself at that time in my life, I didn't necessarily realize it at the time, but I had more of an appetite for risk then than
Hmm.
I ever did at any other point in my career. So if I was talking to a candidate who was sort of in that situation, and I do on a daily basis, I encourage them to think outside of the box. If there is a company that they're really interested in, and they know that they want to target, now they have time and runway to make connections at that company, to follow that company's news, to engage with them on social media,
Hmm.
to sort of begin meaningful conversations. At the same time, I think there are non-traditional pathways into the business. I look at the emergence of freelancing websites and platforms, and the fact that a lot of the people coming out of these programs, especially, thinking in my neighborhood, the USCs and UCLAs of the world, have really strong, maybe financial modeling skills. They're able to put together, deal packages and things like that. I do think that there are a lot of firms out there who may be reticent to hire in a permanent way right now, just given, sort of the uncertainty
Sure.
of the economy. But, if they get over their skis with their pipelines, they need some help, and they need to potentially outsource, and they need to have a trusted resource who they
Hmm.
can count on to do those things. So if you can position yourself as someone who is, has the flexibility, has the skill set, is willing to pitch in, When things get back to normal, you're going to have a really strong portfolio of work examples coming
Sure.
from, potentially strong potential future employers. So I think that that's a great concept. And a lot of people just don't think about it.
Right. And I think, that's a great point. Just freelancing, people don't think about, most people think about, where can I get like a full-time job, and they're
Yeah.
looking for that. But freelance work, if you don't have anything, oftentimes is a great option. And it allows you really to have the flexibility to
Yeah.
do it from anywhere, which now is what most people are doing anyways.
Yeah.
So kind of gives that flexibility to work with multiple companies and kind of taste and see who you work best with without having to kind of go over your head
Yeah.
and commit.
100%. Yeah, I
What,
agree.
what would you say about like just unpaid internship? Is that something
Sure.
that you would recommend?
I think, if you weren't lucky enough to get a lot of internship experience while you were in undergrad or graduate programs, it's a great thing to do if you have the means to do it, or if you can do that while holding down, maybe a job in the alternate sort of hours,
Hmm.
then yes, do it. I think at this point, you have to be as creative and flexible and entrepreneurial as possible, and really just, sort of I don't want to encourage people to accept anything. I think you've got to think about what you want your path to be in the long run.
Hmm.
And freelance in the direction of that path. If you want to be a financial analyst, go, freelance and do, the sorts of things for companies that a financial analyst does, underwrite deals and so forth. If you want to be a marketing person, maybe see if you can freelance and do social media, maybe get a social media internship. If you realize there's a company out there that you're interested in and their social media is bad,
Right.
reach out to them and
Which many
offer those.
are.
Yes, many are. So yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, now is the time to be flexible and to be nimble and to be aggressive. So definitely, unpaid internships, if you can make it work, do it.
Yeah, sounds good. And what about you? Like you're an entrepreneur, obviously,
Mm,
right? You started this
yeah,
company and you do that. What's your biggest challenge right now? Like as an entrepreneur in this market, obviously you just started a new venture, right?
yeah,
Which is awesome because that just shows that even within the midst of this craziness that's happening, you have that drive and that passion that's pushing you to do new things and to, as scary as it is, right?
sure. Yeah. I think, I think my biggest problem has always been not enough hours in the day. And how do you, sort of make sure that you're using your time in the most effective way possible? And how do you sort of triage all the different things that you want to do? So that's more of my problem than, clients or PR or candidates or things like that. I think I've been incredibly lucky because I've been building towards this goal for the last, let's call it 10 years. I've been positioning myself for a moment like this and to, really take hold of this opportunity. So for me as an entrepreneur, it's all about, focusing on the things that are going to, have the biggest impact and, focusing wherever I can in my zone of genius, and
Mhm.
all the other things that are outside of that or that I'm not great at, finding people that I can trust to help me with those things so I can build and scale. And again, like focus more of my time where I can have the greatest impact.
That's absolutely right. Especially when it comes to, I mean, your experience with talking about people placing people but hiring for yourself, right? You're like, it's
Yes.
like the shoemaker, right? He doesn't have
Yes.
the right, make their own shoes. So have you taken on more people in helping you grow?
I haven't post COVID. I was working with a really great intern actually from LMU, which is a local university here in LA. So that was helping pre COVID and until about June. And then I started to make the shift into, more focusing on the launch of CRE at work. And, two at that same time, when you ask the universe for more time and it delivers COVID, you know, I was able to maybe shift some of the gears and the time I was spending on recruiting into CRE at work. But yeah, I'm still focused on growing my team. I definitely have sort of consistent clients that I'm working with across the country. And the idea with CRE at work was never to get rid of CRE recruiting, but to have two independent businesses and also to, not be in the business of constantly trading my time for money, which is what,
Mhm.
recruiting can be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, being in the commercial real estate industry, I mean, it kind of makes sense to find whatever resources you can, to invest in real estate as well, which,
Yes.
that's
an ultimate goal of mine. And, it's interesting too, I think one of the results of COVID, and I always knew this because I've worked nationally and I've primarily worked remotely, recruiting in different markets, is now I'm sort of considering for myself, where do I really want to be? And two, where can I potentially start to invest in the market? Because that's a huge goal that I have. Here in Southern California, cap rates are pretty reduced and condensed, and it's difficult to chase the yield that you can get in some other markets. So I'm looking, at other places across the U.S. I'm also looking at, potentially Puerto Rico and some others. So I'm excited to take a little bit of an adventure myself.
Oh, that's awesome. And yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, the fact that now, and working remotely, you can basically be wherever you want to be, right? You can live wherever you want, and that's really the goal. So that's pretty cool. That's awesome. One last question before we jump into the final four I have for you, which is, if you could see yourself, right, 10 years from now, right? You're saying you're working this like 10 years up until this point, but 10 years from now, like what would you envision?
Well, I think when I launched CRE recruiting, I knew that I wasn't going to be just one person in an office. I wanted to build a larger company and, had some pretty lofty goals about achieving, some, pretty significant changes in our industry. I was always a person who looked around some of the large corporate environments I was in and didn't have a lot of role models. There weren't a ton of female leaders. There wasn't a lot of diversity, and that's something that I really care about. So I would love in the next 10 years to see, some pretty dramatic shifts in terms of the makeup of our industry. And I would love to have a big part in making that happen and sort of being a leader and a conversation starter and a facilitator of making that happen. So that's, from a global perspective, what I would love to do. I think, for me, the next 10 years are really about impact. I've worked in one-on-one settings with candidates for 10 years. I'm, in the process of creating a platform where I can reach hundreds and thousands of people and, in 1 hour have, the impacts that maybe it would have taken me years and years to do in the past. So that's really the focus is awesome. Impact and change, and making commercial real estate a great place for everyone. Not just, a small segment of the population.
Sure, which it is. It's a really, we think we're involved day to day in commercial real estate, but when you think about it, it's a tiny little, part of the, national makeup of business. Even, if you exclude like the corporations and the REITs and the large, there's tons of, most people, I'd say that 80% or so people involved in commercial real estate are like very small companies, very individuals or small, companies. So there's always room to grow.
Yes, absolutely.
So are you building that? Are you building like technology to your platform to be able to do that?
Yeah, I'm in the midst of doing that. I'm using a platform that has sort of components of community and courses and a lot of different sort of bells and whistles. So I can sort of host everything in one place, and I can work with people on an ongoing basis in sort of a community capacity. One of the things that I think is most important in our business, you've got two main things in commercial real estate. You've got people and you've got property. And I think, sometimes the people side of things get ignored or gets ignored. And I really want to focus on building a community where people can come together, leverage each other, from a relational perspective, but also from a best practice standpoint and grow, sort of in community. So that's a big focus. And yeah, there's technology behind it. And that is not my wheelhouse, but I'm definitely learning, which is good for me. It's great to learn new things.
No, that's great. And really, that's the only way nowadays to be able to scale that much is you have to use technology. So let's just jump right into the final four. Sure. And I'm trying to think of more words that rhyme with Weiss because this is we're gonna take out a little segment from this and we're gonna call it a slice of Weiss advice.
I love it.
But the first question I always ask people is, what is the worst job that you ever had?
I think when I was 16, I worked at the grocery store, the Pick and Save in Neenah, Wisconsin. And I didn't particularly love that. But, I think it's good to have those shots. I think they're character building. So I wouldn't necessarily want to go back there, but it was a good experience.
No, well, that's cool. And
Agile.
if I recall, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you come from a military family?
Yeah, I lived 13 different places before I turned 15. And then I was in Wisconsin for about 12 years after that. And I've been in LA for 9 in October. So
Wow.
all over the place.
The reason why I asked that, I don't know, it just entered my mind. I remembered that from somewhere.
Yeah.
So, but you have, was that like impactful in terms of the work ethic that that you found at a young age?
Yeah, I think growing up in an Army family will teach you so many different things. I think, resilience probably is the biggest thing I learned from it, because I went to 2 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and 2 high schools in 6 different states. And when you're a kid, all you want is stability. All you want is your friends. And this is back in the pre-Facebook days. So I would literally send pen pal letters and boxes and packages to my friends, and be really sad. I'd learned that we were moving, and then a month later, I was completely starting over. So I think resilience was a big thing. I think the ability to find common ground with people and to have empathy and care about people. The ability to, never meet a stranger anywhere. That's a great trait for a recruiter to have.
Yeah.
But definitely the work ethic. My dad was also a college baseball player and a really, really hard worker. And so, it was drilled into me that 15 minutes early is on time is late. And if you're late, you better run.
That's awesome.
Good way to go.
Yeah, so that was just a little segue from that, but that's a great question. Glad I remembered that. The second question I ask everyone is, what's a book that you've read that's giving you a paradigm shift?
Sure. I've read so many books. I think one of my favorites is a book called Originals. Adam Grant is the author. He talks about sort of all these different ways to be creative, to be innovative, and to create a culture, and sort of a personality that challenges maybe what are the existing norms in business and in company culture. And that, for me, I've always been, I think, sort of interested in why things are the way that they are, and I guess challenging some of the norms. And so for me, it was great to read a book that made me feel like this was a conversation worth having, and other people care about this. And, the accepted sort of traditions and pathways, like we were talking about in commercial real estate, just because it's been male dominated for this many years doesn't mean that has to continue. So that book I found just really eye-opening and incredible.
Awesome. Okay, so we'll put that in the show notes. That sounds good. Third question: what's a skill or talent that you'd like to learn?
Well, I think this is actually one of my biggest weaknesses, and I don't like the idea of having too many of those. So I've always struggled with math, down to the point of, not being able to calculate a tip on a bill without pulling out my calculator. So I'd love to be better at math. I'd love to be better at understanding some of the financial aspects of our business, especially going into potential investments and things like that. So I really want to sharpen the saw there, although it gives me anxiety even to say the word math. I hate it.
It's interesting. Yeah, I believe it or not, I also was not very good at math and did not like it for majority of the time. And then, got into real estate, then for some reason just kind of opened up certain things when I started thinking about in different ways in money and then in taxes and things. Just certain things opened up that I never expected to. So there's hope.
Yes. I've always been so jealous of the people that just immediately pick it up. I'm good at other things, but the math has always eluded me.
All right. Well, wish you success with that. And if not, you always have the handy calculator. Will help you. It was like when I was a kid, I was always the worst at penmanship. Okay, writing. The cursive writing and stuff like that. Like I hated that. Yeah, and like scribbles, my mother would tell me like you have to get good. I'm like, I don't care. I'm never gonna need it when I grow up. I'm gonna have someone else write for me. And And now, like, when do I even write? Like, I type
know.
everything. When do
Yeah.
I actually sit down and take a pen and paper? It's not
Well, it's
very
like
often.
kids these days aren't even learning cursive anymore, and it sort of breaks my heart because I love penmanship. But yeah, it's a funny thing.
Well, things change, and
Yes.
life goes on.
Yeah.
We learn new things. Like, I don't know how to use TikTok. I can't figure it out. Right.
Oh,
So
I'm just
whatever.
starting. I'm starting. It's very confusing. Very confusing.
But okay. So fourth and final question here is what does success mean to you?
I think, personally over the last year, my definition of success has changed a lot. I think, I was always focused, probably throughout most of my career, on monetary rewards, and that being the biggest measure of success. And I think now, as I've started my own business and the monetary rewards have come, I think I value more the contribution and the impact that I'm making and the feedback that I get from the people that I work with, and not just on the candidate side but the clients. So for me, really feeling at the end of the day like I made a difference, that to me is the ultimate success. And that's what I'm driving towards, sort of exponentially building, is how to make that impact, and how to go to bed every day knowing that I'm living in my purpose and I'm serving others.
Awesome. That's that's beautiful. Yeah. And I wish you a lot of continued success in all areas. That's great. Where can our listeners find you or find more about you?
Well, I am very active on LinkedIn, so you can search Allison S. Weiss on LinkedIn. Our two companies are CRE Recruiting and CRE at Work. We both have company pages. We're on Instagram and all the major social media channels. And just a quick plug, I'm doing right now a 4-day mini CRE Career Academy challenge for people who are either new to the business and looking to break in, or people who are pivoting into our industry, and just talking about some of the tactics and strategies that I've used and helped people use, to start careers in commercial real estate.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. I hope people check that out, because there's so much potential, to learn, and we're always, trying to learn and better ourselves. And it doesn't matter how much you've been involved. If you want to break into commercial real estate, this is your opportunity. Definitely connect with Allison. And I just want to thank you for your time today. It's been great.
My pleasure. You're the best, and I appreciate it.
I appreciate you. Thank you. And to our listeners, thanks again for tuning in and listening. I hope you got tremendous value from this conversation. I know I did. And remember, the best advice comes only when you ask. Real quick, I have one question for you. Did you like this episode? If you did, I want to ask you a huge favor. See, the biggest thing that helps this podcast grow and that will spread this message to the whole world is that if you leave a review, a rating, and subscribe to the podcast. What that does is it basically tells the platforms that this podcast is out on is that you like my stuff and I'm doing something right. So take a few seconds out of your day, hit that subscribe button, leave a rating or review. I would be extremely grateful. Also, I want to hear from you guys. So I want to hear some feedback. If you have any questions for future episodes, please find me on LinkedIn, send me a DM, a connection request, Yona Weiss, and I'd love to hear from you.